Can I hear a wahoo? It's season 2.
Yeah.
I'm so... We're going to get in trouble for that. Even though Yahoo doesn't even use that anymore, we're going to get in trouble for that. You know what? I
didn't say Yahoo. I said Yahoo.
That's
so it's different.
No, it's the same thing, girl.
Okay.
It is finally season 2. This is very, very exciting. I cannot believe it. We have been waiting for this pretty much since we started this process because we really wanted to review season 2 a little bit more. I think we both agree we like this season a little bit more.
Yes.
It's not that we don't love season 1. It's just that I think we just kind of love season 2 more.
Correct.
So I'm very excited to finally be on season 2. It feels like it's kind of been a long time coming. And I appreciate kind of all of the love and support we got on our last video for the season 3 predictions. People really seem to have enjoyed that. I loved hearing everyone's responses and your thoughts.
Yes.
Honestly, this has been like so much fun, and coming up with those was a lot of fun. So let's get into this. This is season 2, episode 1. This premiered just back in July, which is wild to think about because in a lot of ways, it feels like it's been a long time, but really that's like what, 6 months?
Yeah.
A little under 6 months, maybe?
Under 6 months.
And that's kind of where you started. You started with season 2. So it's going to be very exciting to see this. We just watched this again because we hadn't watched it in a long time. Because we kind of get into this habit. I don't know about you guys, but we get into this habit where it's like, we start watching a show and it's like we're just watching one show. Correct. We were watching this show pretty much nonstop for like 2 months, I think. 2-3 months.
And then she introduced me to Hell of a Boy.
Boss.
I thought I was going to do better.
Nope, Hell of a Boss. You do it every time. It's so funny. Yeah, so I got you into Hell of a Boss, and then we started watching that nonstop, and we're kind of waiting for the next episode. I still kind of want to review that, so whether or not people ask for it, I might still do it anyway. You know, we're finally back into Good Omens again just for the reviews, so let us get into it. Hello, sinners, and hail Sappho. It's your hostess with the mostest, Narcissa DeVille, and if you're new to this channel, hi, hello, how are you? We have been expecting you. This is my channel where I do weekly Good Omens videos. Right now we're doing reviews, and as always, my co-hostess with the mostest, Mother DeVille.
Hello.
How are you this week?
I'm well. How are you?
I am great. I cannot believe it's technically we're filming this on Christmas Day. You don't need to know that. It's coming out tomorrow, the day after Christmas. But we just kind of, you know what's so funny is I love how I had a 4-day weekend and I thought on Thursday, I was like, I'm going to get so much done. We're going to pre-film. It's going to be great. I'm going to get writing done. No, none of it happened. I slept all of Sunday. Friday, I don't know what I did. Saturday, I don't know what I did. Here we are. We're filming finally. It's Christmas Day. Not like we were going to do anything else, really. No. But you know what? I feel pretty, and that's what matters. I did do some art. I've been working on this art project that I cannot wait to unveil.
Oh, it's great.
I was originally going to do a video showing it off. I'm kind of glad I didn't because that would have been such a pain in the ass to film. I don't know how people do
But maybe in your outtakes, you ought to show the pink chair and the love you got from your cat.
God, yeah. I took a picture of it, so I may have to. Well, what's funny is I did take pictures of like the progress, so people will be able to see like the progress of all of it. So, but yeah, it's not going to be a video because I just don't have that kind of time. So anyway, this is episode 1. It is called The Arrival. This is... I think, so this is what's weird about this season, right? 3 of the 6 episodes have mini-sodes. This is this one, and then episode 5 and 6 are the only 3 that don't have mini-sodes.
Okay.
I really don't know, and we'll get into that next week when we get into the first one of the 3.
Yeah.
I don't really know why they did it and called them mini-sodes, because I do feel like they fit enough into the episode that it doesn't feel like they're separate. Like, I get it's like a wraparound thing, but it doesn't feel like they're separated enough that it feels necessary to call them a mini-sode. So I don't know what that's about, and it makes the titles fucking long. And for episode 4, I'm going to have to censor out the title because I don't even want to talk about that one. This is going to be it's going to be an interesting little roller coaster. But anyway, This is episode 1. This is The Arrival. And we start off with this beautiful little title screen that says before the beginning. Yes. So the last one we got in the beginning, this is before the beginning. Yes. And it's really, really interesting to me because, and I want your take on this. So we see this, like, it's kind of dark, right? But to me, it looks like the inside of a brain. Like, have you ever seen those, like, CGI kind of videos of, like, the inside of a brain? It's got all the neurons shooting and firing, and there's all these wires. That's what it looks like to me.
I think the way they did it was brilliant.
Oh, yeah, it is brilliant. But I'm just saying, so it's kind of like, is it the inside of God's brain? Is it the inside of Jesus or the Antichrist brain? We don't know. Maybe it's just some random human. I kind of love that idea too. But yeah, so it's like, it kind of just feels like the inside of a brain, and I'm fascinated by that. And we see for the first time ever...
I thought it was just the universe.
Well,
before
it
became the universe.
But that begs the question, what is the universe? Where is the universe? Is it the inside of God's brain? So it's kind of like this, is that why we never see God? Because technically we're just inside her head. She's just this great writer and narrator, and these are just characters in her head. You know, that's something
that
I, as a writer, I can appreciate that. I love that we get to see for the very first time Angel Crowley. He looks so adorable. He's got very curly hair, and he's got his little plans of the universe, and of course he's got the crankshaft in his other hand, which is from the Bentley. I do love this idea that, like, that's what starts the universe. Like, the universe is just like a giant car. He even says later in the episode, or later in this scene, he says the engine won't even be warmed up by then, so it is kind of like reference to the Bentley in the future, as it were. But I love that he, like, sees this flash of light in the background, and he's like, excuse me, and it's, you know, pops up, and it's Aziraphale, of course. I love the idea that they met in heaven. It's this very cute little moment between them. Kind of flirtatious, I would say. He asks Aziraphale to hold on to the plan so that he can, you know, start the whole thing up. And then, of course, he has to say, you know, let there be matter and energy and all these other things, and then let there be light. And there's this big, you know, basically it's the Big Bang, just, you know, their version of it. It's so gorgeous. I think how they did it was brilliant. I think it's a really fun opening scene, and it's not one that I ever expected we would get, especially with how the first season started. I had no idea how the second season would start. And it's the reason, this scene is the reason that I suspect we will get kind of we will get the fall scene, because, you know, Crowley and Aziraphale are talking. He says, you know, in a few million years, this will all be kind of doing better. And Aziraphale's like, yeah, no, you don't get a few million years. We're shutting this all down in 6,000. And Crowley just looks so heartbroken.
Devastated,
And he's like, the engine won't even have a chance to warm up by then. And Aziraphale's like, well, you know, what are you going to do? That's kind of the Almighty's plan. And so Crowley is like, well, that's a stupid fucking plan. Like, I mean, almost verbatim, that's what he's saying.
And it's funny because that's when you could kind of see Aziraphale's face, and he's like, watch what you say.
Yeah,
you know? He can hear things.
Yeah. He's very nervous for Crowley.
And then starts to kind of try to distance himself.
Yeah, I love that
you're trouble.
He tries to change the subject. He goes, I like the pinky blue bit over there in the universe.
That's true.
So he tries to change the subject, and he's like, you know, hey, listen, word to the wise, like, you know, you better be careful what you say. I wouldn't want anything to happen. And I love and hate the line where Crowley says, what's the worst thing that can happen to me for asking questions?
Asking questions.
And it's like, oh, honey.
And it's like,
famous last words.
Yes, but I agree with Crowley.
No, yes, I agree too.
Why can't you
but
ask
I'm just,
questions?
Yeah.
That's when I start to get that whole thing about...
Yeah, but I mean, you know as well as anyone, the Catholic Church is built on the idea that you can't question anything. It's supposed to be, you either believe it or you don't.
Correct.
Take it or leave it, you know, is kind of how people treat it. I don't like that. I don't agree with that, but that is the way a lot of people take it. And obviously, I think this show plays into that idea a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
I kind of skipped this scene a little bit, but I do love the line where Crowley first sees the nebula in the universe, and he goes, look at you, you're gorgeous. And Aziraphale's like, and he thinks it's about him, and then he's like, he realizes it's not, and he's like, oh, fuck, okay, never mind. But they do have that little, you know, flirtation where Aziraphale's complimenting the nebula. It's really cute, the whole thing between them. But definitely the way it ends is, I would say, cliffhanger-esque. It's very like, you know, when he says what's the worst that could happen, kind of just ends on this almost like cliffhanger of like, we know what the worst that could happen is, but I feel like we're gonna see that eventually.
Yeah.
I do love that the way the scene actually ends is there's like, I guess it's like a rain of fire, but like stars or something like that that's raining.
Yeah.
And so Crowley covers Aziraphale with his wing.
It was so
It's
cute.
an homage to season 1 when Aziraphale covered Crowley from the rain.
Mm-hmm.
So we then cut to present day in Soho. We see Aziraphale going to grab his mail, and he has a letter from one of his tenants, who is Maggie, who's one of our new characters this season. We don't get a lot of new characters. I think one of the things that I enjoy the most is that primarily the season focuses on Crowley and Aziraphale, and I think that's what people really want.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that's kind of what season 3 does a little bit more. Although I personally do want to see more of Nina and Maggie. I want to see them kind of get their proper love story. But I will say, I think the season mostly follows Crowley and Aziraphale more than it does anything else.
Yeah.
And so, he sees this note, and we see him go into the record shop where Maggie is very visibly distraught. She's crying because she thinks she's about to get kicked out because she hasn't paid her rent in 8 months. And
it's the cutest shop.
Yes, it is. I will say that there's two issues that I have with this. Number one, I figure Aziraphale for the sort of person who has not upped the rent since the 1800s because he owns it outright, so he doesn't have to.
Correct.
But number two, everyone and their grandmother keeps telling Maggie that no one buys records anymore, so why does she even have a record shop? I know a lot of people, including myself, who still buy records and would love to go to a physical record shop and have been to a physical record shop. So I don't really understand this argument that nobody buys records anymore, because that's just not true.
Yeah.
Plenty of people still buy records. Her shop should be jumping just from the fucking hipsters that no doubt would live in Soho. So I don't know what is going on in this version of Soho, but it is not reality. I'm sorry, but like, her place should be like lines out the block. But anyway, that's just my little...
Out the block or up the block?
Whatever. Down the block, up the block, quarter of a block. I don't know. You know what I mean, though, right?
Yes.
Because there's like tons of people who want to buy records and like the kind of old-fashionedness of it. So I don't know. To me, that doesn't really make the most sense.
And she even said online orders aren't. And you're surprised because, if anything, if someone doesn't want to go to a physical shop, they'll do online.
Yeah, you'd think the online sales would be better. But anyway, I guess it's the whole point. You need to have this kind of thing with them and kind of get the introduction of Aziraphale and Maggie. That's how they introduce the character. So she's worried that she's going to be kicked out, and he's like, just like, oh, you don't like it here anymore? Like, why would you want to leave? And she's like, well, I haven't paid you rent. I don't have it. I can't pay you. And he's like, well, that's my fault for not collecting the rent, so it's all good. And it's this really kind of cute scene. I will say, I think there's a line in here that kind of foreshadows the end of the season, because she goes, you can't just forgive 8 months rent. And he goes, I can. I'm very good at forgiveness. It's one of my favorite things. And I feel like that kind of foreshadows kind of the end line where he forgives Crowley at the end of season 6, or at the end of season 2. So I'm like, yeah, you are good at forgiveness, but in the worst possible way, dude. So, okay. I have to assume that Aziraphale has a reputation that he lives up to as like an eccentric old gay millionaire, because that's kind of the vibe he gives off. Right. Because he's like, I'm going to take these records instead of you paying, and I'm going to
but it's so funny.
He's very adorable about it.
I'm going to take these records.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll just
like
call it done. Yeah, exactly. And you're like,
funny.
Girl. She's like, that would cost you $8 at most. Yeah. And he's like, it's good.
£8.
It's good.
Say it right.
Whatever. He's like, it's all good. I'm going to go now. Listen to my records. Bye.
And he does exactly that.
So then we get to see Crowley, who is sitting in the park reading the Tadfield Advertiser, which I think is adorable. Especially because for a while he was always reading the Infernal Times, but now he wants to keep up with what's going on Tadfield. I like the little homage. I'm hoping that might be kind of a reference that maybe in season 3 we'll be getting some more stuff going on there. Who knows? Would the end of the world, the real time, be going on somewhere else? Maybe. Who can say? And then I love that this guy sits down next to him, and he's trying to be like a kind of like covert spy thing. And funny. Crowley's like, yeah, you got the wrong bench. You want the guy over there. And then he leaves, and immediately after we get Shax, who is our new demon character who's taken over Crowley's job, played once again by Miranda Richardson. I forgot to mention that Maggie is played by her name is Maggie Service. She was one of the nuns in season 1. She and Nina were both 2 of the nuns from season 1. So I like having them come back again. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of cameos like that this season. Yeah. I'll get to the other ones when they come up.
Oh, that's right. She was Madame Tracy.
Yep.
That's funny.
You have said you loved her outfits in this, and I really agree.
Gorgeous.
I think her style is very fun as Shax. I have mixed feelings about the character in general, but I think it's kind of fun, kind of interesting, kind of different. It's kind of like you love to hate her.
Yes.
And especially towards the end, I think I hate her more. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. I think, because it's weird because she goes from being like kind of clueless about a lot of human things in the first couple episodes. Yeah. She doesn't understand sarcasm. She doesn't understand like what Crowley is like trying to say to her. Yeah. But, you know, she definitely becomes like a hard-lined asshole later. And it's like, I don't know how I feel about this. Yeah. It's a big jump. One thing I love is that they're talking back and forth about like how she's taken over his position, and she asks him, was it always this easy? You know, I do all this work to come up with this horrible thing to torture these humans, and then they end up doing it themselves, and it's so much worse than anything I could have ever come up with. And Crowley's like, yeah, it was always that easy. And that feels so true to life. Yes. And it's really funny, but also depressing. And it's like, you almost feel like, does anyone need to do this job? Clearly, the humans have got it handled themselves, but like, that was kind of the whole thing we learned about Crowley and his experience anyway. Then, of course, we get Shax explaining that something is up, and specifically in heaven, although she won't say that. And so we get the kind of big mystery of the season. What's going on? Nobody quite knows, or nobody wants to say, but it's very interesting that we kind of get that little line where she's like, something's going down in the up. I think that's such a funny line. If it's a little silly, but funny. Mm-hmm. And then I love that Shax says, well, if you find anything out from your contact in the bookshop, let me know. And Crowley's like, yeah, I don't talk to him anymore. And I'm like, doubt that. But when I first heard the line, I was like, wait, what?
They're trying to downplay it. It's smart.
Well, yeah, but do they really need to? They're both retired. They say later in the episode, the angels say he's a former angel.
That's true.
And Crowley doesn't work for hell anymore either. So really, they're as retired as the two of them can get, at least at this point. Obviously, that's going to be kind of the end of season 3, but we'll go there. So then, of course, we cut back to Maggie. She's leaving her shop to go to the coffee shop across the street, which we learn is called Give Me Coffee or Give Me Death. Now, what's interesting is in season 1, there was a coffee shop that was across the street from Aziraphale's bookshop. I don't remember what it was called. I think it was called something. I know it was called something else, but it is kind of interesting because at first when I was watching it, I was like, was there really a coffee shop over here this whole time? And yes, it turns out there was always a coffee shop. It was just called something different. So maybe Nina bought it sometime, between the end of season 1 before the pandemic. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I do kind of love it. I love that
I would imagine that it has to be new to her, because if it was across, why are Nina and her only meeting?
They weren't just only meeting.
Well, I mean,
she said she knew her because she was a regular.
Yes, but okay.
I'm sorry. I don't want to burst your bubble, but I love that.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah, okay.
I will
say.
Versus
the other ones that seem to know him for years. I guess that's what I was thinking more.
Well, that's the thing. I will say Maggie has known Aziraphale for years, and she does explain
that's
that
right, because her grandmother,
her great-grandmother or something like that, knew Aziraphale's great-grandfather is what they assumed, but of course, that's not the case.
Correct.
I think it's really cute. I think the implication is adorable. Yeah. I love that apparently the record shop used to be inside of the bookshop, but at some point he moved it back or something like that. It's kind of weird. Yeah. It's not really explained all that well, but I do love that idea. But I love that we get this kind of scene with Maggie and Nina. Maggie is very clearly smitten from the get-go. Yes. She is like, oh, I want to order a coffee. And Nina's like, yeah, I know you. I remember the regulars. And she goes, oh, that's me. And, it's kind of cute. Yeah. She tries to be a little flirty, but of course she learns that Nina has a partner, and that's very devastating for her. And of course, that's going to be a whole thing throughout the season. I would definitely say we do in this episode, I think it's a little bit later in the episode, we get kind of the first confirmation that Nina's relationship is not as great as maybe we would have thought. you know, it very quickly hints like there's something going on there. It's not pretty. And it is really unfortunate. And I feel for her. But I will say, my only, I don't want to say complaint, but complaint for this season is that the episodes are really, really short. This first episode was 48 minutes long, and so much is crammed into those 48 minutes. And I feel like we might have, because some people, you know, don't really like Nina and Maggie, they don't, you know, whatever. And I feel like if we'd gotten to know them a little bit better, if there had been more time for us to get to know them, maybe people would have appreciated them the way they should be appreciated. So I do think it's a shame. I hope season 3 will have longer episodes. I mean, I would love to see like 90-minute episodes, but that's a whole, that might be wishful drinking. But thank you.
I love it.
Thank you. Well, Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. So it was really short, but a lot happened in the episode. What do you think? Because these episodes are shorter than I think episode
I agree.
or season 1.
Yeah.
And I think it does make a difference. And it takes time
to get to know a character.
Yeah. But I think it does make a difference too, that like, you know, in season 1, they were like hour and 15 episodes, and now it's like 48 minutes.
Yeah, that's
well, I mean, you gotta think like season 1, episode 3, the first 30 minutes are just the fucking cold open, and then the last 20 are the actual 20, 30 are the actual episodes. No, I loved it. But that's like the actual episode is the last like 30 minutes. Everything else is like, you know, before the title sequence. Yeah. But in this, so much is getting thrown at you, and you're like, oh shit, okay. Yeah. And that's why I'm like, and you did mini-sodes on top of that? Like, and I know he wanted to keep it to 6 episodes again. I think by the time it's all said and done, it'll be 6, 6, and 6. I get that he, you know, wanted to do that for a reason. But it is kind of like, it's cute. Kind of rough because they're shorter. Yeah. I feel like if he had had time to stretch them out a little bit more, not that I needed the next episode to go any longer than it does, because it already feels kind of eternal to me, but that's a whole other thing. Oh, and I love that next is kind of your least favorite scene, but I do love the hilarity that Nina is like in the middle of a conversation with Maggie, and then she's like, holy shit, and everyone turns around. The whole of Whitber Street is looking because there is a naked man holding a box walking down the street. And of course we know from season 1 that it is Gabriel, but nobody else seems to know who he is, and he doesn't seem to know who he is.
Well, I think
hilarious.
Because of how I feel about Gabriel, I'm like, really?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I don't like Gabriel either. And I've said this before, I don't really care for his whole, just gonna keep calling it an apology tour because I can never remember what the fuck it's really called. I don't really care for it. I don't, I don't forgive and I don't forget, like Crowley.
Correct.
So it's kind of like, I don't know why he had to be the main person of season 2. I mean, I guess all things considered, what it
as
all
it
leads
out.
to, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm still like, I still don't like you, dude. So it's, But anyway, he, of course, is walking down the street completely stark naked, and everyone is looking, and everyone is like shocked. People have got cameras out. He's literally stopped traffic in the middle of this very busy street in Soho, and he walks right up to Aziraphale's door, and Aziraphale, of course, is listening to his record. He is in a world all his own. He has no idea what's going on. Correct. But he hears the knocking at the door, and he's like, oh, okay, whatever. And he goes...
Do they not see the sign that says
closed? Well, what I love is that he goes to the door, and at this point, Gabriel is turned around, so he doesn't know who it is just yet, but he sees the crowd and he's like, what the hell is happening here? And then he notices the naked man and he's like, oh God. And then he turns around and he's like, oh fuck. He doesn't say that, of course, but he's like, oh, this isn't good. And so I just love his reaction and the way he's like looking at the crowd, and he's like, okie dokie, what's happening? What are you doing here? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, okay, that's really weird. And so, of course, I love that he drops the box and hugs Aziraphale completely naked. And Aziraphale's just got this look in his face like, I already have a reputation around here. Please let me go.
He does.
Because And so he's like looking around. Gabriel asks if he can come in, and I'm getting everyone confused. Aziraphale is like kind of leaning back against his door, like, absolutely not. Do not come in here. I do not need this kind of publicity. And so Gabriel's like, okay, whatever. And he turns around and he's completely naked still, but now he doesn't have the box blocking him. And so everyone gasps, everyone's shocked. A lot of people think it's because, like, in the book, it's explained that angels are sexless. So presumably he has nothing going on down there. And that's why everyone's shocked. I don't know. I'm like,
I didn't get that deep into it.
Well, here's the reason I don't. Because if you feel the need, if he has nothing going on down there, but you felt the need to give him an ass crack and hair and all this other stuff, I'm like, I mean, why not just give him a dick too? Like, it just doesn't make sense. I don't know. That kind of thing bugs me.
The gasp isn't because there's nothing there.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think they're like, whoa, okay.
Because they would have went.
They would have been, well, and that's the thing is we do cut to Nina and Maggie who are talking about it, and they're like, it's not something you see every day. And Maggie's whole thing is just like, yeah, maybe it's like a strippo deliveryogram.
Yeah,
it's
that was funny.
Yeah, but at no point, I mean, that's something, if that were the case, if that person did not have genitals, you'd be like, that person does not have genitals. What is going on with the fucking Barbie mold we're seeing here? Which I think would have been a really funny moment.
Yeah.
Like, that is one of the funniest and also creepiest lines from all of the Barbie movie, you know? So I feel like there's a good chance to do that joke, but, you know, they didn't do it. So to me, it says something was clearly there. But anyway, so when he turns around and everyone gets shocked, Aziraphale's like, oh, shit, okay, fine. Get in here. So he drags him in, he closes the door behind him, and it's kind of like, I hope the people go away and leave me alone now. And of course he's trying to get information from Gabriel, but Gabriel has no idea who he is or what he's doing there. And so of course Aziraphale's like, oh, this is, you know, he's so frustrated like immediately. And it makes sense because if your former boss didn't know who he was and came to visit you, you'd be like, no.
Yeah.
We're not doing this.
No.
So then, of course, we cut to Heaven where Michael is on the phone. She's very terse and tense. You know, we talked about this in the last episode that one of the other times she's talking with someone in hell, she seems kind of like playful and maybe even a little flirtatious. But here she's clearly talking to Beelzebub and she is not happy. She's like, hey, listen, this is what's going to go on. If we don't find him, anyone caught working with Gabriel or trying to help him, you know, they are under threat of the Book of Life. And, you know, Beelzebub's just like, I'm on it. And that's it. I was just like, oh, shit. Scared you.
You know what seemed kind of confusing to me? And I thought that from the get-go. I know he's trying to keep thoughts about their relationship on the DL. They seem so lost.
Yeah.
But they know, right?
What do you mean? They know what? Where Gabriel is?
No.
Oh.
Well, did they not know that Gabriel was breaking free?
I don't know. I don't think they talked about it. I mean, that's the thing is there's so much with the way, and we'll get to that when we get to that part of the season.
Yeah.
But there's so much about the way the season goes that we don't really know. We don't know how much they discussed what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Gabriel does say that they wanted to go to Beelzebub specifically.
Oh, that's right. They discuss it more at the end. That's right.
Gabriel did say very willingly, like, okay, you know, am I going to be cast down to hell then? Cool. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
So clearly, like, he wanted that, which makes sense once you know the whole season, but at least at the time you're like, what? Okay. Yeah. You know, so it's very, very interesting how that all goes. There's a lot of questions. I will say, and there's a scene in here, I guess we can talk about it now. It doesn't really matter. Fuck continuity. But there is a scene in there when Beelzebub takes Crowley down to hell and they're like, I'll give you anything if you want if you bring Gabriel to me. And it's very specific that they say, bring him to me.
Yeah.
And I do think, and a lot of people kind of feel like the reason Beelzebub went to Crowley specifically is because they know, like, Crowley has been in love with an angel for years. Like, if anyone, someone they can trust. Yes, they technically say...
to take care of things. Or
no. They technically say, like, you know Earth better than anyone. And that's kind of their covert way of saying, like, you know what this is like. You've been in love with an angel before. You know how dangerous it can be. And I think that's very interesting and really sweet, but also really sad. But we will get to that scene that's coming up in a little bit. Next, after the heaven scene, we do get Aziraphale and Gabriel. Aziraphale's giving Gabriel hot chocolate, and of course it's the first time he's ever had it. And actually, if you think about it, that's probably the first time he's ever had any kind of thing in his life.
Oh, because of the way he's reacting to it.
Yeah, he's very excited. Well, not even just that, but, in season 1, we see him look down on Aziraphale for his eating. Yes. And now he's very excited because he's getting something like hot chocolate. It becomes something that he really falls in love with throughout the rest of the season. So, of course, Gabriel knows that Aziraphale knows who he is, and Aziraphale's kind of like, well, I know someone who looked like you.
That was a good line.
And Gabriel's like, yeah, that's probably me, and that's usually how you can tell. And I'm like, hey, people get doppelgangers, it happens. But yeah, I think that's really interesting, because he's like, I don't know if it's you, it looks like you, but it's different.
Because it's a different version of him.
Yeah, it's a more likable version, but I can't help but feel like if maybe we had gotten longer episodes, we could have, come to appreciate Gabriel a little bit more, maybe appreciated his
predicament,
his arc of getting this forgiveness. Yeah. Because I feel like, especially in the next episode, which is very heavily Gabriel focused with the whole Job thing, I don't feel like that adds anything to make him more likable. If anything, it makes him more of an asshole. Yeah. So I think it's funny that it's like, you want there to be this like big thing where he is like redeemed and all of this, but it doesn't feel like the season does anything to earn him getting a redemption. Yeah. Like, okay, he falls in love with a demon, but that doesn't earn you a redemption. Correct. You're still an asshole, and you don't really ever apologize for it. He never does it. Like,
he kind of does.
No, he doesn't. They fuck off before they can apologize. They're like, hey, Aziraphale, you took care of me, also bye. Like, he doesn't really do anything to get that forgiveness. Crowley gives it to him because he's, he knows Aziraphale wouldn't approve, and he doesn't want to make him upset. But for the most part, Gabriel does absolutely nothing to earn his redemption arc. Yeah. And it's that's very frustrating to me. And again, maybe if the episodes had been longer, we could have gotten that more. Maybe that will be something that will come out in season 3. I certainly hope so. Yeah. But for the time being, it's like, I don't really like you, and you've done nothing to earn this so-called redemption, Correct. It's kind of like, you just, whatever. I don't even know if he really even said thank you to Aziraphale for taking care of him. I think Beelzebub said more of a thank you by saying like, well, I think Aziraphale took care of you better than I ever could. But even then, nobody really says thank you. Nobody says, hey, you risked your fucking life for me. Yeah. Thanks a lot. They're just like, nah. And then just, boop, gone. He even goes so far as to risk it even further to be like, well, why don't we ask them what they want? While heaven and hell are literally warring over this angel and demon. Yeah. He's just like, hey, why don't we ask them what they want? Yeah. And still he gets nothing but screwed over for it. So it, again, like I said, it just makes me more annoyed with him. But we're not there yet. We will get there. Although I have made, I think, all of my points clear. I think that's,
I was like, you're here now.
Yeah, I feel like I've said what I'm going to be saying, but I'm just going to be repeating it. So it's fine. Yes. And then I love that Aziraphale's like, if you don't know who I am, why the fuck did you come here? And Gabriel's like, well, you know how you feel like you don't know anything at all, but you know that everything would be perfect if you were just near one person. And I love that at first Aziraphale's like, yeah, and then he's like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why would you even ask me that? It's like, girl, we know you're thinking of Crowley immediately when he said it, but I just love that, because he even gets up to physically distance himself. And of course, I think that's,
very telling.
PTSD. Really. No, but it is, because it's Gabriel saying that. Yeah. He's like, what if this is a trick and he's gonna kill me if I admit this? Yes. And so I think that's why he
still doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, Gabriel says that if he's with Aziraphale, something terrible might not happen to him. And then Aziraphale's, alarm bells start going off, and he's like, what do you mean something terrible? What the fuck does that mean? Yeah. But Gabriel's off in his own little world because he's experienced hot chocolate and he's very, very excited. And Aziraphale's just like, no. Don't change the subject. What do you mean something terrible? And Gabriel is, of course, of no help. Yeah. He does mention, I love that he's like, things just work out, like how my arms were really tired from carrying that box. And I'm like, it was an empty box. How heavy could that have been? And then, he has here's what's interesting. Sorry, not to change the subject for a second, but I just thought about something, right? So Gabriel he talks about having walked a long way. He seems to be coming from the opposite end of Whitbur Street. But realistically, the elevator that they use the whole rest of the season exists in the Dirty Donkey Bar, which is catty corner to Aziraphale's shop. Yeah. So it shouldn't be that far. And I don't think that's the direction Gabriel is coming from when he comes in. So I don't know if that was like a weird continuity error or something, but did you notice that too? No. He's coming from a different direction. I may have to rewatch the episode to double check that, but I'm pretty sure he's coming from a different direction than where the Dirty Donkey Bar is, because that name kills me every time. But I'm pretty sure it's like directly catty corner to Aziraphale's bookshop. And I know that because Crowley and Aziraphale are in the bookshop in episode 4 during the mini-sode when the zombies are trying to read their lips, and they can read their lips from the bar. So it has to be, the bookshop has to be visible from the Dirty Donkey Bar in order for that to be possible. Yeah. What are we doing here? How far could you have walked, Gabriel?
Moving it.
I know. Yeah. That's the thing, is it's a show that's kind of set in a fantasy universe, so you can kind of just have, everything goes anywhere you want, for convenience sake. Yeah. And I love that Gabriel says that he had something to give Aziraphale, and Aziraphale's like, okay, what did you have to give me? And Gabriel's like, I don't fucking know. And Aziraphale's like, oh my God. So he has zero patience. I kind of love it, because also same. I would also be annoyed in that situation.
Well, especially with everything he's gone through with Gabriel.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And so he, when he mentions the box, Aziraphale goes outside. He sees the box is still sitting there. It's kind of lucky for him. That's a huge ass, building and a huge ass place. That box could have been stolen, but maybe they picked it up and they're like, there's nothing in it. There's nothing we're stealing here.
That's what I thought.
And he brings it inside. He opens it up and sees there's nothing there except for, if you look, you can see there is a fly in there. But besides that, and they don't mention that, Aziraphale's like, what were you bringing me? And I love that Gabriel's like, you're funny. I love you. And Aziraphale's like, no, I'm not going to say that back to you, but thanks. He's like, no, absolutely not. But it is
a bad taste in your mouth.
I will say it is probably the nicest thing that Gabriel has ever said to him in 6,000 years. So at a certain point, he probably is like, who the fuck are you? And what have you done with my former boss? Because you look like him, but he would never say something that nice to me. Crowley, of course, we see standing by his Bentley. We don't really know where he is. He's just kind of throwing mail away. He's kind of on the side of a road somewhere. Shax appears, and I love that, again, he's very sarcastic with her. They have that kind of weird back and forth, and she mentions, hey, by the way, I just noticed that the specific person that we're dealing with is Gabriel. And I love Crowley's line of, his royal smugness is in trouble. How upsetting. Or how awful. And it's funny because she has no idea that that's sarcasm. And he's like, we'll work on it. He gets in the car and he gets a call from Aziraphale who's like, don't say anything. And then he asks him, is he still there? And Crowley's like, can I say something now? And he's like, no, meet me at the coffee shop. I just love that little exchange. And so, of course, they meet at the coffee shop. They're sitting towards the back. It's kind of not secluded per se, but it's kind of like secluded-ish. And we see Crowley kind of sitting down and saying, okay, what's the matter? And Aziraphale's like, why does there have to be something the matter? And Crowley's like, well, you have 3 reasons for calling me, and this was your something's wrong voice. So I love the idea that he knows.
He already knows the voice.
Yeah, he knows when something's wrong. Now, somebody else pointed something out for later in the season, and again, we're kind of all over the place, but I had to point this out now. Because Crowley can tell when Aziraphale has something wrong in his voice, surely he would notice that something was wrong with Aziraphale, the way he's talking about the job offer to go back to heaven. Like, he knows his something wrong voice, so he should be able to tell something is up there, something is not right. I don't trust it. And so, maybe there's something more there that's kind of underwritten. And again, we won't know any of this or have any of these answers until season 3,
Yeah.
which could be in the next year-ish, who's to say. I love that, Nina comes up and she asks what they want, and Crowley asks for 6 shots of espresso and nothing else. And Aziraphale goes, does that calm you down? And Crowley's like, not really. And I love that he says it like through clenched teeth. Like he's already anxious, but he's going to add to it. And it's like, girl, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then, of course, Nina asks about his naked man friend. And I love that Crowley's look is like, I'm sorry, what now? And Aziraphale just looks so mortified, but also very like an embarrassed husband that's been caught cheating. Like he's like, it's not what it looks like. He's not naked anymore. Like he can't even meet Crowley's eye.
Yeah.
And I love that Nina's like, you're a dark horse, Mr. Fell. And he's like, yeah. And then, of course, Crowley is like, okay, well, does this have anything to do with everything that's going on right now?
Yeah.
And, Aziraphale kind of just doesn't want to answer. He's very quiet. Nina brings over his Eccles cakes and Crowley's drink. Crowley drinks it very, very quickly. It kind of feels, I don't know, it's kind of like a funny moment. It feels very like Muppety for some reason. I don't know why. Something about it just feels very like Muppety to me.
That's such a
the way he just like
Muppety.
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, well, are we gonna go to the bookshop then? And so they get up. I love that Crowley holds open the door for Aziraphale when they leave the coffee shop. I think that's very cute. I think that probably adds to why Nina is like, something is going on between them.
Yeah.
And then of course, they walk across the street. Aziraphale just hands him the plate of Eccles cakes while he opens and unlocks the bookshop, and Crowley's just like, okay, well, I'm just holding this now. And then, of course, we get the line where Aziraphale is kind of darkening the room and closing all the curtains, and Crowley's just like, so what's going on? What does this all have to do with? You'll never guess who Shax was telling me about. And Aziraphale's like, yeah, I think I will. And Crowley's like, all right, guess. And I love that Aziraphale's just like, Jim? And Crowley's like, do we know a Jim? I love the implication that everyone that they know together.
Yeah.
That's such a couples thing.
Do we know a Jim?
Yeah, exactly. It's such a couples thing. And then, of course, we get Gabriel pops up behind him, and Crowley like nearly leaps out of his skin.
Oh my God, it was so funny.
It's very funny the way he's like, Gabriel. He's like so scared.
Scared and then pissed off.
Yeah. And Aziraphale's like,
Which is
hey,
so cute.
Surprise. And but he has a reason to be pissed off.
What is he doing here?
Yeah, he has a reason to be pissed off though, because it's Gabriel. The last time he saw Gabriel, he was telling the person that he loves to die already. Oh so he's like, excuse me, what the fuck are you doing here?
And Aziraphale still doesn't know that he said that.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say, because, they have the conversation with Gabriel, and he says he doesn't know, and Gabriel says he's dusting, and Crowley pulls him into the back room, which I love that it's, painted in yellow, and it matches Crowley's eyes perfectly. That's a whole other thing. I've talked about that in a different video before. But I love that when they're talking about it, he's like, what the fuck is he doing here? And Aziraphale's just like, I don't know. And he's like, the last time we saw him, he tried very much to cast you into hellfire. He is not our friend. And Aziraphale's like, well, I don't think he has any friends. And so they kind of have this like fight naturally, because that's just who they are. They're always having breakups, whether or not they're together. I do kind of find the whole conversation interesting that he's like, I want him to be as far away from us as possible and the peaceful existence I carved out for myself. Aziraphale's like, I thought we carved it out for ourselves. And Crowley's like, well, so did I. And so, he's like, Aziraphale's like, well, then you can go if you don't want to help me. And Crowley's like, excuse me, go? And Aziraphale's like, well, I want you to be here and help me, but if you don't want to, like, I can't make you. And it's like, guys, can you stop breaking up every 5 minutes and just talk to each other? Anyway.
Make it interesting.
Well, yeah, clearly. So, Crowley storms off because he's pissed, and Aziraphale just kind of sits there and he's like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that once he's in the street, he's so like angry and annoyed that he is like telling himself, that's what people do. You take a deep breath, you count to 10 before you do something stupid. And he's like, nope, can't do it. And he explodes into lightning, which hits the coffee shop and locks everything down, but also turns off their phones. So Nina and Maggie are locked in the coffee shop, which I think is really kind of a funny little moment. There's about 1 million fanfic things that are all based on this kind of idea. So I think it's very fitting. A lot of people have said this season feels very kind of fanficky, and I'm like, yeah, well, I don't care. If it gets me what I want, I don't care. But yeah, I think it's really cute how they're kind of locked in, and Nina's like, oh, great, I'm going to have about 100 missed texts from my girlfriend or my partner. So this is going to be great. She's like not happy about it. You know, Crowley storms off, gets into his car and kind of tears ass down the street. Then we cut back to Uriel and Michael in heaven. Tensions between them are already strained because, you know, Michael seems to think that they're going to take over in Gabriel's absence, and Uriel's like, the fuck you are. So that kind of leads me to my, you know, belief that it's not going to go well with Aziraphale being Supreme Archangel. They are not going to take it well because they can't even stand each other, let alone him. But I think it's very funny. So then their tension is kind of broken when Seraquiel comes in and brings along with them Muriel, who is kind of our first new angel that we get to see. Well, Seraquiel and Muriel are both new angels that we get to see. I really like Muriel. I think they're a lot of fun. They're kind of adorable. And there's a lot of theories about them. I've talked about that in our other video. Yes. And they've got this matchbox. I forgot to talk about this in an earlier scene when we cut to heaven and they find the matchbox, and it's like, you know, this material object, and it becomes this whole big thing in this part of this episode because they're like, what do you mean there's a material object in heaven? That's not possible. And you're saying this while Michael is sitting at a desk in a chair and Muriel is holding files. And I'm like, how do we differentiate what's a material object versus what's not? I mean, I guess it makes sense in the sense that Michael's desk is glass. You can kind of say like, it's something
transparent.
Yeah, it's something different, but the chair very clearly isn't. So it's really weird how they decide.
That they hold.
Well, that's totally glass. So I mean, that you can maybe argue is a little bit makes more sense, but just the whole thing, it like looks supernatural because it glows and has smoke and shit in it. But anyway, I was just like, I don't know, I don't get it. But of course, you know, Muriel comes over, puts it down, and like, it's so funny because Michael is like terrified of it, and they're like, okay, well, let me just open this. And then I love that they're like following it as it opens. I think, again, it's another kind of Muppety scene. They're just like, what's going on? They're like expecting it to be a bomb, which becomes even funnier in the end of the episode when, Crowley grabs the box and the demons are all scared and Seraquiel's just like, it's a box, it's not gonna bite you. Like, don't pretend like you weren't just scared of a box like 20 minutes ago, bitch. Do not start with me. I will say, I love Seraquiel's style. I love that they're in like this, like, not a power suit, it's like a jogging suit, but they've got these killer ass fucking boots. I've never seen an angel in boots. I was like, okay, girl, work. One thing I'm very glad about this season is that they toned down the makeup for the angels, because last season the gold accents were so like distracting. Like Uriel's face was just like covered in gold. Yeah. And now this season they kind of toned it down a lot.
They'd have a little bit. Yeah. And then the next episode it was like
half their face.
And you're like, what?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
I'm glad that they kind of toned it down this season. I appreciate that. So then, of course, we get Crowley, who's visited in his Bentley by Beelzebub, taken away in a bunch of flies. They take him down to hell, and Crowley's like, oh, son of a bitch, I thought we had an understanding. And Beelzebub's like, well, we don't. And this is where we kind of get the line where it's very clear that Beelzebub wants Gabriel. You know, they do say bring him to me very specifically, and they say, hey, you can have whatever the fuck you want if you bring him to me. You can be a Duke of Hell. And I love that, you know, we get the new actress for Beelzebub. So, of course, everyone has to comment, like, is that a new face? And Beelzebub's like, no, fuck off, leave me alone. And I love that Beelzebub at one point goes, it's a shame that hell never appreciated your talents. And Crowley's like, it is? No, yeah, it is. It is a shame. You should be ashamed. It's just so Like, I love those moments. It's
Yeah.
so silly,
Yeah.
but it's fun.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Beelzebub explains, like, hey, here's what the risks are if we don't get him back. Like, anyone caught harboring Gabriel will, you know, be dealt with extreme sanctions. And Crowley's like, that's not really a thing. That's just something we joked about to frighten the cherubs. And Beelzebub's like, no, it's real. You know, you won't just not exist anymore. You will have never existed.
Yeah.
And Crowley's like, oh, okay, cool. Fuck. And then, you know, he ends up back in his Bentley and he's like, all right, now I gotta go get Aziraphale. So he zooms back to the bookshop. And I love that Aziraphale is very clearly trying to pretend like he's doing work.
Yeah.
When Crowley walks in, but he's not. He's just kind of sitting there. And Crowley's like, okay, well, you know, can we just skip the song and dance, or, you know, can we take it as I clearly fucked up here? And Aziraphale's like, no, I want a proper apology with the dance. And I do love that when you consider the time frames that Aziraphale mentioned, they're all times where Aziraphale put himself in danger. We don't know what happened in 1650, but we do know that in 1793 was one of the first times, which is when Aziraphale almost got his head cut off. Yeah. And then 1941, which of course was the moment that he, you know, nearly got himself killed the first time with all of the, well, a couple things happened in 1941. There was Crowley is driving down he's listening to Queen's Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy. I think that's really funny. You know, he's driving like a maniac as usual. And then he walks by the coffee shop where Nina and Maggie are locked in. And they have signs and stuff. And he's like, oh, sorry, shit. So he, you know, snaps. Everything comes back, and we see Nina has a ton of texts from her partner. I do love that the way they did it is like they're almost handwritten and crumpled notes. I think that's a very interesting way to show texts. And it is kind of the first indication that clearly things are a lot darker than they seem. So then, of course, they decide that they're going to protect Gabriel and keep him at the bookshop until they can figure it out. They have to do, you know, they know that a miracle that's too big would get noticed by heaven or hell. But they figure if they do half a miracle, you know, with Aziraphale blocking out hell from noticing and Crowley blocking out heaven from noticing, they figure out that together they can pretty much keep him safe. So it's going to be fine. So that's what they do. I think that's kind of a really brilliant idea, to be honest with you. And, you know, I love that the line after they do it, they're like, nobody will have noticed it. And then immediately we cut to heaven where there's like a submarine siren. Yeah, exactly. And Uriel walks up to Michael and is like, I think this is your job. And Michael's like, what is going on now? And so they go to Earth, or they go to the little rotating Earth where we see a big pink plume that's coming out from near the bookshop. And I do love that they say it's a 27 Lazari miracle, which is to say how many people you could bring back from the dead. I think that's such a funny way of determining how big a miracle is. And that the two of them together could bring 27 people back from the dead with their miracles. That's incredible and very interesting, and speaks to their power and speaks to, I think, why heaven wants so badly to separate them.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll get to that. But, you know, I love that at the end, Michael is just like, well, we may not know where Gabriel is, but we do know one thing. There's a former angel who was up to it in his bookshop owning neck. And that's the end of the episode. Again, this is a super short episode.
You know how I feel about the whole Gabriel thing.
Yes,
so.
yeah. You're like, I don't have anything nice to say.
Yeah.
So I'm just not going to say anything. Yeah. Fair enough.
I was raised right.
Yeah, right. No, you know, and that's the thing is like, it's hard because this season is kind of more focused on the Gabriel thing. That's part of the mystery. But I still enjoy the season overall. I still thought it was a good episode.
Yeah.
Again, it is very short. You know, there's a lot that's still left unanswered throughout the season. So if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to comment down below, like this video, tell me what your thoughts were on the episode, what you think of season 2 so far. I don't know why I said 3, excuse me. I'm getting really excited. I'm jumping into it. Yeah. Tell me what you think about season 2 so far. How do you feel about the whole Gabriel plotline? Do you think it was good? Do you think it was unnecessary? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well. Of Of course, you can subscribe to this channel and you can become a member of this channel. We have 2 tiers, the Ineffable tier and the R-Side tier. The R-Side tier does get a little bit more. You get the behind the scenes stuff, but you also get early access and shout outs. You can also become a member of my Patreon, patreon.com/NarcissaDeVille. That is my behind the scenes channel specifically. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay devilish and see you next Tuesday.